Just bear with us for a minute, please. We're just trying to connect to the live stream. Just be patient with us. Thank you very much.
Ready to go? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Hunters Hill Local Planning Panel. My name is Leslie Finn and I am a solicitor and I am the chair of today's meeting. That's very annoying. The experts on today's panel are Mr. Chris Young, Town Planner, and Mr. Ron Edgar, Heritage Architect, and the representative from the community today is Dr. Meredith Shields. The meeting is being videoed and recorded. None of the panel members today have a conflict of interest in the matter before the panel. Each of the registered speakers will be given 3 minutes. All members of the panel have been provided with copies of all the submissions and have read them all. So any submissions should confine themselves to a summary of their most significant points. The panel now formally adopts the meeting of the meeting of the 18th of June. And I welcome the first speaker today. The matter before the panel is it's an application for the modification of the initial approval for works to the Town Hall building, which were approved on 19th of December 2019. There are 9 persons registered to speak, some for the proposal and some against. So the first person on my list is Councillor Ben Collins, and perhaps if Mr. Collins would now speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting a lot of feedback and finding it.
Yes, so am I.
I wonder if we could get that
Could I suggest that everybody mute themselves unless they're speaking? Because I think the feedback is probably coming back through the open mics for each of the participants.
Apologise for that. Just give us a few minutes.
The mute icon's at the bottom left of your screen for everybody who's not familiar with it.
Everyone should mute.
Excuse me, everybody, through you, Chair. The issue was that everybody has to be on mute. One person speaks, that's what the feedback's all about. Apologise for that.
I can't hear anything now. Hello.
If just the person who's going to speak turns on their mute, then everybody should hear them.
I have twice now. Oh, Councillor Collins.
I think it's playing in the background. If someone's got on YouTube in the background, so I'm echoing. Chair, Chair,
I called Councillor Collins to speak.
you might have two accounts open, and that might be the issue. Because I can see another one of LPP Chair.
Just excuse me for a minute, everybody. Just bear with us for the technical issues.
That's the one where you're next to, because it lit up. I think that might be better. Well, there's no echo. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you, Ben.
Okay, well, I'm ready to start if you wish, Chair, at your direction. Would you like me to start or?
I think we've lost the chair for the moment, Ben.
Yeah, yes, Ben. I think just soldier on, mate. I think that might be the best.
Okay. Can the Chair hear me? No. I think I might wait.
Well, I can certainly hear you, Ben.
Put your hand up if you can hear me. Oh. That's everyone. What would you like me to do?
Can we have one person speaking at a time, please? And I think it's Councillor Collins' turn.
Okay. Go? Okay. Sorry. I've got the feedback again.
I actually think it's probably coming through the chair's microphone from at council, I think.
Well, the only people not on mute are the chair and Dr. Shield and now Steve Krepis. Maybe if everyone just mutes and then I'll just start. If that's okay with the chair. Yep. Okay. Okay. No feedback. Okay. Okay. All right. Can you just give me the thumbs up, Chair, to start, if that's okay? Okay, great. All right. Look, I want to talk briefly today about heritage and the community expectations. Now, the main point I want to make is that there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that Col Madigan was in any way involved in this town hall project. The only link that we have is that the architect, Kevin Marshall, who is on attended all the council meetings and submitted the plans and the drawings, he worked for Edwards, Madigan, Tozzillo and Briggs, which was Col Madigan's firm. But Col Madigan's name is nowhere, and he didn't even attempt to take credit for this, as famous architects are prone to do. Now, at the time of rebuilding the Hunters Hill Town Hall, Col Madigan was the lead architect of two of the most significant buildings at the time, perhaps of the century, the High Court and the National Gallery. That's between 78 and 80. Both big projects that the Queen came out to open on separate occasions. Now, the idea that he had a third project going in the late 70s and that it was the Hunters Hill Town Hall is preposterous. That story that the Hunters Hill Town Hall was designed by the same person that designed the High Court is a romantic fairy tale. And I have to say that for the National Trust to make a submission urging Hunters Hill Council to set aside universal principles of inclusiveness and fair access based on an unverified myth is very off colour. And it would behoved the National Trust, as guardians of the nation's heritage, to check their facts before making a submission of heritage, particularly of this nature. Now, the National Trust letterhead carries a lot of weight, as it should. This baseless submission is a stain on the otherwise great work that the National Trust does. And I would ask the panel to disregard this submission by the National Trust because it is baseless, and it's not just the Trust, it's 17 of the submissions refer to the wrong architect. If credit belongs to anyone, it would have to be Kevin Marshall, who is the only person that has been documented to be involved in this town hall rebuild. Now, the heritage report suggests that there is no heritage impact, so as far as I'm concerned, that's out the door. Now, community expectations. What does the community expect? We had an event last year where someone came in a wheelchair and couldn't get in through the front door. They had to come through the kitchen. Completely unacceptable. And in my submission, I find that if the community were to elect a mayor with limited mobility, that mayor might be able to get to the dais. Now, how can we prioritise the archaic practice of sitting a mayor on a dais over the ability of that same mayor to even get to the dais? So, look, I just humbly ask this panel to allow this council to do the right thing and not be swayed by a letter writing campaign that does not reflect the wider community sentiment and it is actually factually incorrect. So with no verifiable heritage basis for rejecting this, it just seems right that the council of the day be allowed to incorporate these universal principles of access to inclusion into its buildings. So I think it's time for us to do what's right. And I humbly ask the panel to allow us to do that. Thank you. That's enough. Thank you. So I've finished. Sorry, Chair. Went a bit longer.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Dr. Alistair Sharp.
Anna, time.
I'm unmuted. Thank you, Chair. Oh, sorry about my dog. Specky, come here. I'm speaking for the Hunters Hill Trust, and we object for a number of reasons. We argue there's no real justification for altering the chamber because the chamber accommodates our small council quite well and rarely fails to seat all the people attending council meetings. It serves perfectly well as a meeting place for committees. I've been on committees that have met there. And for larger groups, there's always the room next door. 2 rooms next door, a smaller one. And we understand the argument that the floor could symbolize a more democratic form of government. But as the drawing shows, the mayor and 4 council employees will still occupy seats of privileged status, and the removal of the tiered seating for the public would actually reduce their ability to follow proceedings. So it's actually a reduction to democracy. The capped minutes identify the piecemeal evolution of this project. It has come along in dribs and drabs. The public consultation was advertised for only 10 days, contradicting what is in the business paper for this meeting. It was originally advertised on the 14th to close on the 24th, I believe. And then on the very last day of that initial period, another report appeared, the new heritage report. So the whole process has been very unsatisfactory and unprofessional. The changes are not supported by Council's own Conservation Advisory Panel or by the National Trust. And indeed, the Conservation Advisory Panel specifically say they would not support the removal of the dais, the raised gallery, or any treatment of the walls. The recent heritage report by CIAN contradicts itself by heritage value. It says it possesses, this is a quote, heritage significant demonstrating the association with this renowned architectural practice and that the internal finishes are typical of the Madigan designs. But then it concludes, there will be no changes to finishes of the face brickwork, and even though the majority of the face brick wall will be obscured. So the Trust argues that the chamber should be preserved in its current form because it has powerful heritage value. Heritage didn't stop at the end of the 19th century, heritage continues. And this, together with the main auditorium, is an important example of late 20th century brutalism. Thank you.
Alistair, could I ask you a question, please? Are you against the application in total, or only the area or part of the application that is related to the chambers?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have, I meant to say, we're merely opposing the changes to the chamber. We have no problem with the rest of the changes, and we applaud the idea of using the main entry and having a ramp access to there.
Thanks, Alistair. Thanks for the clarification.
Sorry, Chair, I can't hear you.
Anna?
She's not muted. Try again. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to make a submission for your consideration, and I'm speaking in favour of these changes. They're in pursuit of a design that not only provides opportunity to improve our fiduciary obligation to our community to ensure our council is financially viable, but also respects our obligation to the story of our heritage and our current modern place within that story and the need for design change around that. Finally, I support it for the opportunity to put right historically discriminatory design roles and that there is simply no justification to ignore it any longer. So without pondering which came first, the General Manager and her team of consultants have given us a chicken and 2 eggs. And it seems to me that they're all lined up and ready to cook right now. The chicken, or the elephant in the room, is long overdue compliance opportunity around designing for access and non-discriminatory inclusion. I have no expertise in this area, but I recommend a cursory glance at the Building Code of Australia Disability Access to Premises Standards 2010. and also the Federal Disability Discrimination Act of 1992, in particular sections 5, 6 and 23. 23 states discrimination is actually allowed if the premises are existing and alterations require them to make accessible access would impose unjustifiable hardship on a person providing that accessibility. I'd like to suggest that far from impose hardship, this design change will actually improve outcomes, not only for access, but for the 2 eggs I spoke of earlier. Egg 1 is a much needed freshen of space for all users as a place of ceremony in our community. The added benefit of this design means that council can improve their workspace use conditions and when the chamber is not otherwise occupied, of course. This creates opportunities for a more generous and collaborative workspace, and it also frees up other income generating spaces within the town hall so that they can be hired out. Egg 2 is a timely opportunity to embrace best design for modern collaboration and leadership, which, while respecting the role of the council and the chairperson, purports that better teamwork and better decision-making happens at a table where the task at hand makes everyone equal and able to contribute for best outcomes. Just over 100 years ago, women had to fight to change laws to be allowed to vote, let alone participate in government and leadership. Today, the laws are already there to oblige us to ensure that everyone who uses our building and chamber can participate without impediment. Design decision has a potential to include or exclude people. Inclusive design is used when you want a product or service to incorporate the needs of the widest number of people, regardless of their age, gender, or ability. It needs to minimise hazard and it should appeal to all potential users, avoiding any possible connection to stigma. In the end, inclusive design isn't just about good practice. It's really about celebrating diversity of the people. I'm looking forward to seeing this next part of the evolution in the story of Hunters Hills Council, without disregarding our history and our heritage, but looking forward to our future and our capability. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Councillor. The next person registered to speak is Councillor Ross Williams.
May I ask that Alistair Sharp turn his microphone off, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak to my objections to the changes to the council chamber. My submission is found on page 136 in your papers. I state up front that I'm speaking as a long-time passionate local resident of Hunters Hill, not as a councillor. Hunters Hill community has a strong commitment and desire to preserve its unique heritage. This is evidenced by heritage as a key value in our CSP, LSPS, LEP, DCP, and many other reports. From my personal experience as an alderman, deputy mayor, and mayor in the 1980s, shortly after the reconstruction of the town hall and chambers, a lot of pride and effort went into the new building to honour and respect the proud history and tradition of local democracy in Hunters Hill. This building was not a whim of an architect, but a respectful creation of the community, designed to be the cultural and democratic heart of the Hunters Hill community. Note the photos in my submission on page 136 of your papers. It is respectful and fit for purpose. Heritage is more than space or void, as stated in the report before you. The report is deficient as the chamber should be assessed against all the dimensions of heritage consideration: history, fabric, context, and social significance. None of those are addressed in the report. Heritage assessment is much more than simplistic facadism. Hunters Hill has an obligation to be the model applicant in respect to its DA applications. The information exhibited for this proposal did not include many of the reports relied on in the paper before the LPP. The plans are inconsistent with the graphics that were presented on the website. Limited advertising to the broader community was not done. Disregard for the advice provided by the Independent Conservation Advisory Panel. The panel has rejected the proposal on 3 occasions, and I note in the report before you that the minutes of 1919 in November are misrepresented in the report. No consideration or analysis of the responsibilities under its own LEP, DCP and elements of the Borough Charter are given. The National Trust also rejects the proposal. The report is deficient in that it does not recognise the fit for purpose of the chamber in its current configuration. The room is used for a wide range of committees, meetings, even the LPP meet in that location, and is not encumbered by its current configuration. The report incorrectly dismisses the alternative access options. There is ample room to accommodate a ramp or a lift device. Inclusion can be achieved without compromising or destroying the important heritage and cultural significance. The report is flawed. The proposal should be rejected by the LPP as it does not meet the required level of credible analysis of heritage and cultural significance of the chamber. It also does not take into account the important advice from its own CAP and other heritage authorities. The heritage and cultural significance cannot be treated in a superficial way as facadism or purely a void. The chamber can be upgraded to meet access standards, inclusive standards, without destroying its cultural and heritage significance. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Phil Jenkin.
Before we go on that, Madam Chair, can I ask the same question to Ross that I asked to Alistair about his objection? Is it to the total development, or is only to the chamber itself?
The chamber itself.
Okay.
That's the important thing I'm talking about.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you.
Mr. Phil Jenkin.
Madam Chair and members, if I can go straight to the question of access, and then I'll go on to other things. Paragraph 10 of the address notes. The question of access appears at page 40 of your papers, and Vista Access says this about a low-rise platform lift to the dais. Consideration could be given to a low-rise platform lift to access a stage area. However, a clear space of 1.5 metres is required for the approach of the lift and the departure at the stage level. Yesterday, with the permission of council staff, I actually went into the chamber and I actually measured the dais because it doesn't appear anywhere that I could find anyway in the papers. And the dais itself from the back wall to the top of the stairs is 2.54 metres. There is clearly enough space for such a lift to be placed in that area and access both ways, including across the body of the hall. Of the submissions made, there were 43 submissions made. I've read them and gone through them carefully. There are 41 objections to what the council is doing. And there are arguably, certainly one, Councillor Collins against, and arguably a second. So let's say 2 against. And that reflects, in my view, the actual community feeling about these proposals. There are a number of very significant submissions, both by members of the community and also by the National Trust, the National Trust Vienna Cottage Committee, the Hunters Hill Trust, and Council's own Heritage Expert Advisory Body. These CAP is highly valued, can I say, by this community. Highly valued. It's of people who've been in this area a long time. If I talked about Helen Temple and the Historic Houses Trust, all of them, Tony Coote from the Hunters Hill Trust, all of them have deep knowledge about the heritage of Hunters Hill, and clearly they set out the only valued assessment of the heritage of the chamber. And they set it out clearly, and that appears at pages 54, 56 and 60 to 63 of the report. And they go through them in detail, as you're supposed to do under the Borough Charter. So CAP knows what it's doing, and the community highly values it, and it's strongly against interfering with this significant heritage chamber, and known as the People's Chamber. And it's important to realise that not only is the community saying it and these expert bodies saying it, the council itself, in its own reports at pages 4, 5, 23 and 29, acknowledges that the chamber has heritage value. And in many of the submissions, they add to that in the sense of cultural and social value of all the battles and other things that have happened in that chamber since 1980. And that is not disputed. It is not disputed. The evidence is all one way that this chamber has significant cultural and social value. And it's got a lot more. It's got the heritage value.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person registered to speak is Councillor Jim Sanderson.
Well, before we deal with that again, Madam Chair, can I ask Phil that same question I asked everybody else?
Yes, look, I'll answer it this way. I've had a look, and I think former Mayor Quinn may have as well. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what he says. But when you come up through the stairs, what's being proposed is just sweep to the right and go through the council area now, and then go through a door into the council chamber. And I'm not convinced that the way that they've done that is sufficiently respectful to the fact that this chamber belongs to the people of Hunters Hill, not the council staff or anybody else. For the people, it's the people's chamber. And to enter in going through like that way doesn't convince me that there is proper respect and there's not better ways of going from the front door into the council chamber as it's being proposed. The second thing, which is just a nonsense, frankly, is that they're blocking off the access now between what's called the small hall and the council chamber. And so if you're staff or members of the community or anybody else and you want to get to the small hall from the council chamber, you got to fight your way through a false door and through a cupboard. And I just think that's ridiculous, frankly, and it shows the lack of respect from these plans to what is the People's Chamber and the appropriate access to it.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Could we now hear from Councillor Jim Sanderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the application of universal design principles, but they cannot operate to oust consideration of Council's LEP, including clause 5.10, heritage conservation. As an engineer, I've looked at the access problems, and I do have a bit of experience in this field. I think the access issues can be dealt with far less impact on the heritage significance of the chamber. And I'll happily answer questions on how that can be achieved if anyone wishes to ask me. I'll go back to the heritage side of things, but the recommendation fails to properly assess heritage significance before jumping to the conclusion that will not have significant impact. In Hunters Hill, it is usual for applications for proposal impacting on heritage items to include detailed assessment of cultural significance of the item to be performed following the New South Wales Heritage Assessment criteria. No such assessment has been performed. My own assessment would be that the original components of the council chamber, as opened in 1980, make high or exceptional contributions to the significance of the heritage item. The heritage assessment is also flawed in that it confines its consideration of impact on the fabric of the heritage item to the building itself, whereas the borough charter is clear. Fabric means all physical material of the place, including elements, fixtures, content and objects. Clearly components of the chamber, including its layout, the exposed brickwork, the raised dais, the tiered gallery, the mayoral and council benches, the solid doors, the style of seating and the carpet are all parts of the fabric of the heritage item that must be respected and preserved as far as possible. I note also that the report claims that Madigan was not involved with the design. I note that with some of the designs like the High Court, Madigan himself had other team leaders. In the case of the High Court, it was Chris Kringus. So I do not regard that the claim that Madigan wasn't the designer to have any significant detriment to the significance of the heritage item. I'm very concerned that the proposal was to involve covering the brick walls with gyprock to provide a more contemporary space. They were the words that were published to councillors. And it also proposes to demolish items which are important parts of the fabric of one of the most significant heritage items in the district. It shows no understanding of heritage. Rather than starting from a false assumption of a flawed heritage assessment, the approach should be that of the Borough Charter, which advocates a cautious approach to change, do as much as necessary to care for the place, to make it usable, but otherwise change as little as possible so the cultural significance is retained. The council chamber is already a highly usable space. If I can give an example of one of the items that, there's absolutely no justification for removal, and that is the tiered gallery at the rear of the chamber. What I would say about that is that at the present time, people can easily access wheelchair spaces or in front of the gallery, and the retention of that tiered space provides great equality of access in terms of allowing all participants good lines of sight to the activities that are going on in the chamber. With respect to the solid doors, same sort of thing. We can.
Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Sanderson, but you're well over your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very happy to answer any questions. I do have the copy of the
and we have all read we've been provided with and have read your submission.
Madam Chair, if I could make one point, some of my response today is to do with new material that we hadn't seen before, which relate to the disability access to premises standards, and I have done some analysis of that, and I think I can justify why some of the components do not need to be removed, in particular the raised gallery area.
Thank you. Thank
Jim,
you,
I'll ask you that same question again that I've asked everybody else about, is it the whole application or purely only the chambers itself that you're objecting to?
Look, the chamber is the main aspect, but I mean the other aspect to it is if you look at the design overall, I'm delighted that we are doing things to improve access, but I mean my feeling is that we can blend and get the best out of both. It just needs a bit better analysis where we seem to have started with the assumption that it's okay to strip everything bare, which I think is entirely the wrong approach. But if you look at the areas outside the chamber, you'll see that the access seems to be sort of through an open office area, and I think the final door you go through before entering the chamber, if you come through the main entrance now, it's only 850 millimetres wide. So you seem to be designing for the minimum requirements for access rather than generous access. So I have concerns about beyond the chamber, but in particular the chamber shows no respect for the what I see as being very significant heritage fabric at all levels, which can be preserved if a more thoughtful design is put in place.
Okay, thanks very much for clarifying it.
Councillor Zach Miles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of points, I guess, to start with. The implication that Council has somehow been unprofessional in their conduct, I think made by Dr. Sharp, is entirely incorrect. And as Councillor Williams said, we have been a model applicant in this case. We have gone through all of the right channels. And quite frankly, the report by Adam Burns and his team was a very good report. Now, if I could move on to the heritage and the access issues. Just on the access issues, the idea that we could have a differently abled mayor that needs to get on a lift to get up on the dais is it's not inclusive design. It's exactly the opposite. It's actually stigmatising to someone in a wheelchair or someone that's differently able. Essentially the same thing that happens in the gallery with the raised dais there. So I don't know how you could possibly argue that we are going to adhere to any of the requirements of universal design or handicapped access by putting a lift or a ramp in the chamber. It's actually ridiculous to think that the mayor needs to lord over and sit above the rest of the council. It's an archaic idea, and quite frankly, I think that the idea that we're going to have a chamber in this, doused in formaldehyde whilst the rest of the council offices and front desk has been upgraded is quite silly. There is heritage value in the council, in the town hall. It is a significant civic place, but it certainly doesn't reside in the chamber that was built, some 20 or 30 years ago. I understand the arguments for the ongoing nature of heritage, but if you tried to build a brutalist a building of that style and type in Huntersville today, I can tell you as a matter of fact that you would have a very hard time getting it approved. It would not be something that was looked at favourably. And the idea that that we can't upgrade our facilities, that has been recommended for approval twice now by the staff, that the staff want, and 4 of the 6 councillors that are addressing you today have spoken in favour of. I don't actually know how it's gotten to this position where the majority of the council want this, the community are screaming out for better facilities. The staff are trying to do the best job that they can in upgrading our community facilities, and we're held back over a dais that doesn't comply with anything, let alone the universal designs of universal access that we should be adhering to as a council. So I think that we need to get on and approve this and get it done, because it is consistent with the upgrades to the chamber as they have occurred, and it's something that the community, quite frankly, needs.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Could I now call upon Mr. Arthur Chesterfield Evans?
Yes, that's unmuted. Yep. I'm a doctor. I've lived here for a long time, and I was a Democrat MLC in New South Wales for 9 years. I'm shocked that we have to come here and fight that. It's one thing to have vandalism in your bus shelters. It's another when the council wants to demolish its own chambers. I'm shocked by this. I'm shocked by the reports of the consultants. I mean, Peter Lonigan's report talks about equity and flexibility. Well, if you think turning a council chamber into just a normal middle-sized room is somehow equity and flexibility, I mean, sure, it's flexible. You can do anything with a middle-sized room. The point is, there's some dignity in having the mayor on a dais, and there's quite a lot of practical good in having the audience on a raised tier so they can actually see what's going on. So the idea that simply turning it into what basically comes to a common old garden middle-sized room seems to me an extraordinary thing to ask. I think the words of the Conservation Advisory Panel are very sensible. I think the National Trust has said this. If it's brutalist architecture, and I'm not an architectural expert, of course it wouldn't be built today, because today would build it in the standard to today. But if we have a historic piece of brutalist architecture, if that's the word for it, then good. Let's have it as it is, and it works quite well. I think disability access has been a great excuse sometimes to do extraordinary things. The council spent $30,000 moving the Dunny Wall in the Woolwich Wharf bus shelter, $30,000 to move the wall of the Dunny 100 millimetres, although disability access consultant said, yes, well, that does make it meet the standard, but it would have been perfectly adequate before. We're now spending millions of dollars on Woolwich Wharf to supposedly change the slope for disability to the pontoon, and yet people have been going down that pontoon in wheelchairs for years and years. I think it is a bit of a Trojan horse for another agenda. I'm very concerned that some members of council who want the council abolished anyway want to downgrade the seriousness of its deliberations, make it all mediocre, so they can get rid of it for the feather in their political caps. The council deserves better than that, and so do the citizens. It's a tradition in the legal profession, and certainly in parliaments, that the people in authority do have a raised dais to say, yes, we are in charge, everyone can see us, we're up here, and that, in a sense, gives a dignity to the office and to the proceedings. I think people do want to look up to their mayor. They try to look up to their mayor. Sometimes these days with President Trump and so on, it's very hard to look up to your leaders, but ideally people do want to look up to their leaders. They want to hear what they're going to say. They want to see them chair the meetings, and it's perfectly reasonable to have a dais there. And if it needs the steps to get, or a lift to get some access, or a ramp, well, so be it. It's possible we're going to have a mayor with disability in future. And if that's the case, we can build it. Perhaps now would be a nice way to do it, or later if needed. But there's no reason to vandalise the council chambers. And my view is we should keep it exactly as it is, and not waste ratepayers' money vandalising our chamber. And to answer Chris Young's point, which I think he will ask, it's about the other changes. I must admit, I'm not sure. Taking Phil Jenkins' point about accessing it through what amounts to an office area is not ideal, I think, but I'm not right across the details of the various options that could be for the things other than the chamber. Certainly, I'd like to keep the chamber the way it is. As far as the other options are concerned, well, I really can't make detailed comments on that.
Thank you very much. And now our last speaker is the Mayor, Councillor Mark Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll start at the conclusion, given the time limits today. I'll start with what really matters in this municipality and what this discussion is really all about. It's about equality. It's about treating people equally and fairly. It's about allowing all people to move on one level around the space: staff, councillors, residents, committee members. It's about the ability to move around the chamber freely without the need for any mechanical or electrical aids. It's about not drawing attention to physical disabilities. It's about not drawing attention to any disability that comes with age and frailty. This is about equality. This is clearly not about heritage. It is clearly not about symbols of authority. We need to carefully consider the advice of heritage experts who have visited the site, have discussed the proposal with staff, and have all the available information on which to make a thorough assessment. The chamber's brutalist architecture is not an enduring architectural style. This was short-lived. This is not about a Sulman Prize-winning architect. He was not the architect. It's not about symbols of authority. We have numerous symbols to establish the mayor's authority. It's about the people's chamber, a chamber that can be used by all visitors equally, as our current building codes encourage, without drawing attention to their infirmity, age, frailty, or disability. It's about function over form. It's not about, it's about equality, and it's about fairness. Heritage. Some have said this is about heritage. Not so. The chamber was designed in a brutalist style towards the end of the brutalist period and completed in 1980, a very recent chamber. It isn't about heritage. Many other councils have refurbished their chambers. Lane Cove, Ryde, Canada Bay, Willoughby are just a few. Some have argued the chamber is significant because Col Madigan designed it. The architect of this rebuild was Kevin Marshall, supported by another architect who worked on the council chamber. And to be clear, the responsible architect was Kevin Marshall, supported by another architect who was alive and well and living in Queensland. Architecture is an interplay between form and function, and this often leads to conflict and compromise. A compromise that reflects the client's desire and the architect's determination. Some have argued that the current chamber design promotes a sense of occasion with its symbols of authority, and that by removing the raised platform which the mayor and senior staff occupy and making other changes, that the mayor's apparent authority is diminished. Not so. There are many symbols of authority. Honour boards that look down upon us, holding us to account, the Australian flag, the Hunters Hill flag, the mayor's gavel, the memorial quest, the location of the mayor at the head of the chamber. The mayor's role is clear and well documented. The authority will not be diminished by these changes. If additional authority is required, then of course the mayoral chains and the mayoral gown can be worn at every council meeting and council function. It's important to understand why I have recently, very recently, and readily adopted the name People's Chamber, not the Councillors' Chamber, not the Council Chamber. It's because many people in the municipality use the chamber, and the following are just a few. And it's not well suited to all these uses. The Conservation Advisory Panel, the Local Planning Panel, Le Vésinet, the Art Committee, the Traffic Committee, the School Principals Committee, Civic Risk Mutual, there'll be far more people that can sit anywhere near that table. The Ordinary Risk Community, North Shore Regional Organisation of Councils, residents meeting with staff, staff who meet with councils, the Mayor's regular meeting with the General Manager, the General Manager's regular meeting with staff, the Director's regular meetings with their staff, staff department meetings, training days for councillors, training days for staff, strategy meetings for staff and councillors. And there are many, many more examples of broad use of this, the People's Chamber. This is the People's Chamber, to be shared and not locked down after each council meeting, only to be reopened and dusted off weeks later for the next council meeting. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution. Now, unless any of the experts have questions they might wish to ask, I propose to close this part of the meeting to enable the panel to make its deliberations and to come to a determination of the application for the modification, and in which case we will then go back into an open meeting to advise you of the results. So thank you very much, everybody, for your contribution. Well, I've said it. You'll all have to go into the waiting room, I'm told.
Does this mean you call us back, or how does that work?
I'm not an IT expert, Dr. Chesterfield Evans, but I am learning very quickly.
Well, do I turn
I'm
it
surrounded
off,
by
or do I-
experts here who hopefully will tell us how to do that.
Just sit there.
Right, I'm all ears.
So, or if you can all just sit there comfortably, have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and then we will invite you back into the meeting. I think that's how it's going to work.
So I just minimize it and it pops up again. Is that what happens in practice?
Just wait and we'll invite you back into the meeting.
Is that what that means, though, in practice?
Where's Mr. Young? Ah. We're ready to go, are we? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to this open part of the meeting, which is to advise you of the determination of the panel after our deliberations while you were in the waiting room. And I can advise you that the deliberation is in two parts. Part A, the determination of the panel is that the modification be approved. The voting was 3 in favour and 1 against. Dr. Shields was opposed to the modification sought, and my notes of Her reasons are: the application was not justified as the chamber is very well designed in terms of its usability and functionality. She accepted that the chamber is of high heritage quality, but that any changes should have minimal impact on the fabric of the space and should be approved by Council's Heritage Advisory Panel. Part B of the resolution, of the determination, is that the panel acknowledges and accepts that the lining of the walls within the council chambers being carried out under clause 5.10 bracket 3 close bracket of the Hunters Hill Local Environmental Plan 2013, which states that consent is not required for works that are of a minor nature, as confirmed in the heritage advice from both City Plan Heritage and Lonergan Cracknell Architects. So the full resolution of the panel will be available on the website as soon as possible, and I'd like to thank you all for your contribution and attendance to today's planning panel meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.